You are most welcome to our podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Ecological Christian Organization in partnership with Marathon Advertising. And the purpose of this podcast is basically to bring experts from different sectors and areas to share and discuss the experience in relationship to climate change, on how it's affecting them and how it relates to their sector. For today's topic, we shall be discussing the nexus between climate change and the sexual and reproductive health. And here with us in the studio, we have our colleagues from Reproductive Health Uganda, who will be introducing themselves later. But to give you some kind of background, you know that we are currently living in the climate change crisis, and you are aware that if we do nothing, then the cost of inaction is quite high. And it is upon this background that Ecological Christian Organization, in partnership with the Marathon Advertising, started this initiative with the aim of mobilizing other stakeholders and partners to take action, because climate change is currently one of the biggest challenges of our time. And it's because of that we shall be discussing this topic, which relates to sexual and reproductive health, and how those who are in this sector, the practitioners, for this matter, our colleagues from Reproductive Health Uganda, who are very key in this sector, on to share with us some of the challenges they are seeing, how their programming integrates climate change issues, what are their plans, what are their challenges, what are their calls to action, and definitely how we can work together to advance this issue, because we need to work as global citizens, but also as people, because we live in one global village, so that the actions of every individual, every institution contribute to either building resilience of the communities we live with, or it moves us towards mitigation in terms of handling or addressing the issue of climate change. The linkage between climate change and sexual and reproductive health existed and has been existing for years. It has been there. Many communities have been facing this challenge, but some of the impacts have not been well amplified or have not been well understood. And today we shall be discussing to really understand those linkages, so that we are able to appreciate the magnitude of the problem, as well as, of course, designing strategies on how we can be able to address or contribute towards move towards the solution. The Paris Agreement, which was signed in 2015 in the city of Paris in France, is the basis for the current climate regime. And the commitments in there include a number of climate-related issues. But for today, we want to explore how climate change relates more with health, and specifically sexual and reproductive health. You find that many girls and younger people are affected by the climate risks in different areas. We see that we are experiencing floods in different parts of the globe. Right now, the floods in Pakistan has killed so many people. We find that in the Horn of Africa, because of drought, sometimes people also die, including their livestock. You find that in some areas, people don't have access to water, and they can't do productive work. And we know that access to water also is very key in promoting hygiene, and therefore water is a very critical component with when we talk about sexual and productive health, because without water we can't cook the food we are talking about. We can't have can't talk about nutrition. We can't talk about good health in general, and therefore we believe that this is a very critical issue. We celebrate the fact that during COP28 in Dubai, health and climate change was put on the agenda of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And this gives us an opportunity to discuss and be able to make sure that we feed into that agenda. However, we need to see how this cascades downwards in terms of the grassroots movement building, because without action at the bottom level, then we may not be able to do much at the higher levels. And this discussion is a part of the grassroots mass mobilization or movement building that will lead us into action. But also we need to be able to amplify how girls and young people are suffering from the impacts of climate change, and from the perspective of sexual and reproductive health. With that background, let me take this opportunity to introduce, to invite our colleagues to introduce themselves. With me on my right, I want to invite Geoffrey. You can introduce yourself and briefly, and then we proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Isaac. Thank you also for Ecological Christian Organization for giving us this platform to come and have our experience shared with the entire globe. I'm Geoffrey Ogutti. I work with Reproductive Health Uganda as a project coordinator. I support RHU programs that integrate sexual reproductive health in climate change. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Geoffrey, for that brief but very critical introduction. And on my left, I invite Martha. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. Thank you, our moderator. My name is Martha Mugabe. I work with Reproductive Health Uganda under the Youth and Gender Department. I'm so happy to be part of this conversation where we see that climate change is one of the things that affect women in our day-to-day lives. Yeah, thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Martha, for that introduction. Geoffrey, I know that you work with the Reproductive Health Uganda, a very interesting and very vibrant institution in terms of when you talk about sexual and reproductive health in Uganda or in the region of Africa, you can't miss Reproductive Health Uganda.
True.
What's your mandate? Can you share with us your mandate for that matter?
Yeah, just maybe briefly to give a highlight on what Reproductive Health Uganda is all about. Reproductive Health Uganda, as popularly known as RHU, is a non-government organization that's volunteer-led. This organization has been in existence since 1957, and we tend to be proud saying that the RHU is older than Uganda, because when Uganda was getting its independence, Reproductive Health Uganda was already providing services to Ugandans. Yeah, formally, before 2012, we used to be called Family Planning Association of Uganda, and our mandate was championing family planning programming in the country. But due to increasing need for sexual reproductive health and rights services, we rebranded to Reproductive Health Uganda to give a holistic approach to SRHR needs for Ugandans. Yeah, as an organization, we are affiliate to International Planned Parenthood Federation, which is a global movement for sexual reproductive health and rights. And it gives us guidance on how to go about issues of SRHR in all contexts as the global world states. So we are here to share our plight as well as our current work in advancing SRHR in context of climate change. So as we shall be moving on the discussion, you realize that the entire world had given less attention to health when it comes to climate change programming, as earlier alluded by our moderator. But through COP 2028 that took place in Dubai, the consensus was developed and health was given a priority in all COP negotiation process. So as RHU, this gives us a mandate to front our health-related programming. And in this case, I'm looking at sexual reproductive health and rights. However, I want to make it clear that when we talk of SRHR, we also include gender equality as one of the core components of sexual reproductive health.
And that's why I think Martha is here.
Yes, so
to share with us.
our conversation will be broadly addressed in the context including gender equality perspective. Yeah, so quickly, maybe just to let our audience get to know that issues of sexual reproductive health are broader, and climate change affects them broadly as well. I'll reflect on issues around safe motherhood. When there is a flood, women, pregnant women, women of postnatal period will never have access to health services because most times floods disrupts access. And
Geoffrey, that's very interesting. I'm sorry to cut you short.
Yes.
There is this very popular photo, I think it was in Kasese.
Yes.
Where a mother with a child on the back, she was trying to cross a river which was flooding, and
using a log.
And there's a log,
Yes.
and she was in gumboots, and you find that two men were at the other side.
True.
They looked not to be so much bothered, and she was really struggling with the child on her back.
True.
And she was looking at crossing on the other side.
True.
Could this be one of the examples, the typical examples which we are talking about? I found that kind of submission very interesting.
Yes, actually, why women are vulnerable is because of the triple burden. When a crisis hits, women experience all burdens from reproduction, and caregiving. So we all sensible people would expect the men who are across the river to come and support. But imagine, because they know that a woman is supposed to struggle, for them they were watching her doing what? Crossing. So all these scenarios puts women at a critical step in as far as climate justice is concerned. So as RHU, we drive our mandates from our core components of sexual reproductive health and how they blend with the real world in terms of climate change crisis. Yeah, if you look at issues of teenage pregnancy, we have realized that places where there is water scarcity due to climate-related disasters, young girls trek longer distances to access clean water. And in the process, they get people to support them. And sometimes
in another way,
they support,
not
does
very
not come
positive
for
way.
free.
Yes.
Because as they are supporting you to carry a jerrycan, there's a lot of conversations.
Yes.
And if this young person is not supported with the sexual reproductive health information, to be in position to say no,
yes,
in most cases, the support
somebody can take advantage of that
into unhealthy sexual relationship. So all those put together, the compounds the impact of climate on women and young girls, plus many other scenarios that we can talk about. Look at post-abortion care services. When there's a crisis, young women have gotten teenage pregnancy, they will seek for abortion services illegally.
Yes.
And if they do so, most cases, some of them end up into crude methods, which may end up taking their lives. So as RHU, we do look at sexual reproductive health information and services, not as a preventive measure for climate change, but we want to empower these young people, to empower women with the information so that they prepare in advance. They become adaptive and as well as resilient to the crisis that may arise. So as RHU, our position is very clear. We look at SRHR not as a mitigation measure, but as an adaptation strategy to climate change crisis. And that's our niche.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Geoffrey, for that submission. I can see the journey you have moved as a RHU. It's very interesting, right from the time of rebranding. I mean, you mentioned that actually, in a way, RHU is older than Uganda, if we count Uganda after independence.
Yes.
Of course, we congratulate you.
Thank you.
And we really celebrate the milestones you've been able to register, and quite a number of things which are very, very interesting, which you have just mentioned. One of them are those very interesting connections or nexus between how climate change affects, practical on ground sexual and reproductive health issues within communities, and also within when disasters strike, like floods or famine or prolonged droughts. What does that mean? Or landslides. What does that mean? Not only for women, but also for young mothers and young girls. And you have articulated it very well on how you have gone ahead to put climate change issues, integrating it on your programming, and which you, of course, you are making it as a deliberate strategy, so that you can be able to advance the actions you are talking about. For that information, I want also to appreciate the fact that you have gone ahead also to include gender equality and equity as part of your programming. And I want to take this opportunity to invite Martha to share with us, since you are working with the RHU, how are you experiencing the gender part of it? When you talk about gender equality in relation with the climate change and sexual and reproductive health, how are you feeling it?
Okay, thank you. So, gender equality is a conversation that has not been welcomed, especially in our society, because of our culture. But also, it is seen as a feminist conversation. When you talk about gender equality, whether you're a man or a woman, you're seen as a feminist in a negative way and not in a positive way. So, it is something that is not very welcomed. But we are doing as much as possible to do sensitization. That gender equality is not about it's more of equity. Having let me say that the less privileged population on like helping them to come up. Yes, so it's something we are really doing a lot of sensitization on, and going into communities, telling the men that you can still help your woman at home, you can help your children at home. It's not supposed to be caregiving. It's not supposed to be left to through the mother alone. You made the children together, so it's feasible for you to help out with the small things here and there. It's not all about providing finances, providing the basic needs. You can also help out in the caregiving work. So also when it comes to climate change and gender, it is more of let me say, if there are floods and then you're evacuating the home, as a man you should help out the woman to carry out the children, help out with the children. Don't let the woman,
You don't evacuate yourself. and leave out the family,
Exactly.
including the mothers and the children, and leave the children to the mother.
Yes.
That would be very unfortunate.
Because you find a woman is pregnant, at the back she has another child, and the man is moving with nothing.
Wow.
So it is it would be nice to have the men, you're helping out with the children, you're not leaving the burden all on the woman, because you're assuming that this is her responsibility.
It is, Martha, it's very common when you move on the streets, not only on Kampala but elsewhere in many of the African cities. You find that maybe even in other parts of the world, you will find a man moving with his own phone, smartphone, but you find the wife is having the baby together with the back, on the back with a bag. And you say, how can this happen in this era where a man is moving with only his smartphone, and you find that they are not bothered about that burden you are talking about. Yeah. So I'm really seeing how stressful it can be when when things are not balanced, you know.
And you know that goes back to our social cultural norms, where in society it has been normalized that the woman is the one for doing the caregiving work and the man is for provision. So you find the man is just moving with nothing, and then the woman is carrying the burden, the bags, yeah.
Wow. Very interesting, and very interesting, actually interesting dimension to know that the small things we really don't take seriously may end up affecting our progress to do something, for example, in the area of climate change and sexual and reproductive health, or reproductive health as a sector. And Martha, I wanted to ask you a question. How do you see and realize, in terms of your work in RHU, how do you see the work you are doing building bridges? How is it building bridges in terms of contributing to solving the challenge?
Okay, so what we are doing as RHU, we are doing a lot of male involvement, but also doing sensitization around the men, teaching them that they can as well be part of
the whole agenda.
Of the whole agenda. Yeah. So we have male, should I call them male engagement groups?
Yes.
Where we keep engaging the men, we keep sensitizing them, so that we do mindset change. Yes. Yeah, that is one of the things you're doing as RHU.
So you are talking about this critical access to information, knowledge empowerment, and participation by men to really understand some of these issues is really very key. Yeah, and sure. I think that's really very important. And we do appreciate that kind of approach. Mr. Geoffrey.
Yes.
I know that RHU is doing a lot.
Sure.
But also, the work you do can't go without any challenges or some of the obstacles. What are some of those challenges, obstacles you are facing as you try to do work around this area?
Yeah, maybe. Thank you. But maybe before I dive into challenges, just allow me to add one of the critical strategies on what my colleague has shared, on what we are doing to address some of the issues. One is that as RHU, we have recognized the role of women groups in our societies, and we have decided to build their capacity so that most of our conversation around sexual reproductive health and climate change is embedded in the routine work that they do. And this has given us mileage, because you realize that through women groups, we have managed to tap into the men. The spouses come to find out what their wives are discussing, and also utilize the same opportunity to talk to them. And at the end of the day, as families, they develop action plans and they see how best they can address some of the key challenging issues. And one of the critical issues has always been about preparedness. How are these families prepared to respond to a disaster? And through these conversations, we use an approach called gender transformative programming, where we help communities to analyze and critique each other. And also,
can that cause conflict in family in families or homes?
It is not a critique in terms of a violent way, but having a lens on what as families you are sharing,
yes,
and advising one another to come to a common understanding. So this technique has helped us so much, because what used to be as stereotypes that families would believe in have been deconstructed, and currently families are willing to share their resources together, plan together, make decisions together, and also take leadership as women in their respective communities. Yeah, so in the context of climate change, as you highlighted the issues of challenges, there's a number that we have observed, and they continue to hamper our progress. And one of the critical one is issues around the norms. How are we normalized in our society has remained as a challenge. Despite of the efforts that stakeholders and players have put in place, society still comes in play. And it is something that we are still struggling with, to make sure that we deconstruct, we promote positive norms, so that men and women are supported to appreciate the role of each other. Then two is the understanding, the little appreciation among all stakeholders, the role of sexual and reproductive health. Critically, when we started this conversation, when you would talk about SRHR, what would come into the minds of all stakeholders is family planning. They will say, now, do you want to mean that if we do reduce fertility, we will control the greenhouse gas emission problem? But we have kept our position very smart, because we have evidence that countries that emit less are the ones that are grossly impacted by the greenhouse gas emissions. So,
like Uganda.
Like Uganda.
Yes.
So our role is not to advance family planning per se, but to front a broader SRHR perspective, so that people get to understand that all these parameters has a play and an attribution in the vulnerability that we face. Yeah, so as RHU, it was very difficult for us to deconstruct the current seeking around sexual reproductive health among community members, but as well as stakeholders, including the ministry, because the direction they wanted to look at is around mitigation only, where they say reduce fertility so that you reduce pressure on soil or the available
and other natural resources
so that climate change does not come. Yet for us, we use that's a populist belief, but we want to look at a global perspective, where we refer to countries that are experiencing the highest impact of greenhouse gas emissions as those countries that have controlled their population. But the emission is very high, isn't it?
That's true.
Yeah, so let's use family planning as a right, but not as a solution.
So there you talk about, you use the rights approach.
Yes.
Let
women have access.
Let those women who want to produce go ahead and produce. And in any way, we should not use the pretext of climate change to impede or affect the aspirations of having children.
Yes, as long as they have the capacity to take care and provide for these children they can produce.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is our position as Reproductive Health Uganda, and it is through that position that we call our global north.
Yes.
To play their role.
And which role is that?
Climate financing.
So their climate financing becomes very critical
in all the actions that the developing countries are taking.
So that action can be taken, because without money, nothing can be done. So climate finance comes in as a delivery vehicle.
Yes.
So that to attain or to take action on some of those areas where action is needed, so that we realize both mitigation but also adaptation achievements.
True.
Wow.
That's it.
Please go ahead.
But also, strategically, we have not been playing this role alone. We treasure collaboration and partnership from from all key players, either at global level, national level, but also at subnational level. And through collaboration, I think we have tried to translate some of the global commitments that Uganda as a country has done into actionable points. And maybe just to highlight, as a country, we are on the journey of operationalizing our Health National Adaptation Plan that was developed following Uganda's commitment at COP in Dubai.
Wow.
Following the endorsement of health as one of the negotiation parameters at COP.
So Geoffrey, you mean we are on the way the development of Uganda's health national adaptation plan.
Actually,
And
it was developed and launched last year. Yeah.
Wow. So which means we have a framework which can guide our actions.
True.
Under which we, civil society and other stakeholders, can act so that we are able to contribute to that national priority, but also global priority under the climate change negotiations.
True.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I wanted to add on one of the
Please
challenges.
Please go ahead, Martha.
I think one of the challenges we are also still facing as a country is that people haven't yet understood the intersection between climate change and SRHR. When you tell someone that, let me say like the heat waves, they affect pregnant women heavily when it is so hot, or when you tell them that, when there is scarcity of water, it affects menstrual health and hygiene. So the community hasn't yet understood how the intersection between climate change and SRHR, which is so critical for them to understand if we are to push the climate change agenda. Yeah.
Wow, this is quite interesting. Another area of interest when you talk about heat waves, on how they affect expecting mothers and how they can also cause havoc in terms of mothers experiencing miscarriages.
Yes, preterm births.
And which of course can't be thought of, because always, sometimes because of the cultural norms which Geoffrey talked about, people will think about maybe it was another mysterious witchcraft or something different which caused this. But now we are happy that we are now discovering that actually climate change through the heat waves is causing miscarriages among not only young mothers, but even those who would not expect to experience it. I think these are very interesting discoveries, I would say.
Yeah.
Scientific discoveries.
Yeah, I think just to build on my colleague Masa's point, around the May, we had a project that we're launching in Karamoja. It's looking at loss and damage resulting from climate change related disasters. And for Karamoja, we are looking at high temperatures. So when we're there launching the project, we got testimonies from the district officials that during the last year's heat waves, as a region, they experienced a lot of miscarriages. But as communities, they never had the clue
what was happening
until the conversation that we had with them. That's when they started reflecting backward. And I think that's something that's very key to let our members know.
This is very exciting, because this now brings in the aspect of climate justice.
True.
And again, you have talked also about the issue of loss and damage, which we've been talking about for years, and we are happy that this was put on the agenda of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change under the climate negotiations, especially during COP 28 in Dubai. But one of the biggest challenges we've been facing is the issue of putting enough money within the loss and damage fund.
True.
And you find that actually the challenges on ground, communities are facing some of these impacts faster than expected, and they need to be supported. Unfortunately, money is not trickling down. Money is not reaching them
True.
at the most at the time which is most needed. And I think this is where we needed to call upon the development partners, especially the so-called Annex 1 countries, the developed countries that contributed more to this challenge, to provide finance so that the communities in the different places that are impacted by climate change are able to adapt to those impacts.
True.
But also in terms of they should be able to survive the wrath of those impacts. Those impacts create havoc because they can divide the families, they can create conflict within communities,
Yeah.
and therefore they need to appreciate and the fact that there is need for support, and putting money into the loss and damage fund is one of those ways. But also at the national level, there is needed to support initiatives, for example, which are under, for Uganda, for that matter, under the national
Determined contribution.
national determined contributions.
Yeah.
Then this is, but also under our national health adaptation plans, which is really very critical because it articulates very well what kind of support that we might need.
True.
And now this is a call for the different development partners in Uganda that are doing work around climate change, to really look at on how do we partner, how do we work together, civil society, the private sector, government, both local and central, so that we are able to implement actually the National Health Adaptation Plan. Because without the implementation of this plan, then us contributing to this sector, to this area where climate change is affecting issues to do with sexual and reproductive health, we shall lose a lot.
True.
And this puts us at the level where we say, for us as civil society, we are prepared. Ecological Christian organization, together with the Reproductive Health Uganda and many others who are not here, are ready to work with any development partner, any government department, to advance this issue, because these are some of the new scientific discoveries. And I'm learning a lot, especially when you talk about your experience in Karamoja, what you saw there, that during the last heat wave, many women experienced miscarriages, and this is really very quite and this could be prevented.
Sure.
This should have been prevented. So I believe that if we work together, we can be able to really to advance the sector. Martha, just as we conclude this session, do you have any special message? But also, first of all, do you have something you want to say? Amidst all these challenges, we celebrate that we've been able to achieve this. And then any call for action in any area. For example, you can say, yes, me as a younger person, at least I've been able to see and experience what communities on ground are experiencing. And that puts me also at the center of being able to learn, but also be able to share. But you know better.
Okay, thank you. So one of the things I can say we can celebrate, though we are not yet there, is at least we are having more conversations on climate change and SRHR. People are trying to become are getting aware of what is happening, that they are getting to know how climate change affects them. Besides, when it comes to like famine, people are getting to know that, yeah, climate change is going to affect me when I'm pregnant, or there's destruction of property, or there are things like teenage pregnancy. People are trying to understand the interlinkages, but also we are having institutions getting on board, like Makerere University. We are having organizations getting on board, but also we are getting funders that are getting interested in the climate change sector. Yeah, and then my call to action would be to, of recent I was in Kasese, and then people were, where River Nyamwamba is,
Yes,
and
yes.
people are still staying around there. Even at the riverbanks, you're still going to see very many houses there. So I think we still need to do a lot of on ground sensitization for people to understand that in case, let me say, a flood happens again,
Yes.
there is going to be destruction of property. You're probably going to lose your life, but also maybe have the government relocate these people, compensate them, and help them to relocate, because some are like, if I evacuate, where am I going to go? But in case the river floods again, you're going to lose your property. You're going to die. So there is a lot of sensitization that needs to be done with these people, but also relocation and maybe compensation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's again brings up the issue which we've been talking about, the issue of loss and damage fund, where we need to put resources within the fund so that people are compensated, as Martha is mentioning. People are really paid to, or supported to relocate to safer places.
Yeah.
Because you find that because of the landslides, because of the floods, which have in many cases broken and swept away bridges which connect communities, communities are stranded. And of course, our governments in Africa and beyond have always tried their best, but because of the limited budgets, they also can't invest more in this area. And you find that we really needed to find a way of addressing this challenge, because we can't leave communities to just perish because of this catastrophe, and therefore this crisis we are living in. Indeed, the impacts are hitting, and they are coming bold and strong. And we see that also they need bold and very strong actions, not only from central government, but also working with the development partners, all stakeholders such as civil society, the private sector, as well as the global community, so that we confront this monster, climate change, which is really affecting us all. Geoffrey, one critical but very important also issue, which you also highlighted in a way, that amidst all this great work you are doing,
Yes.
what are some of the challenges, and what are your call for action? Which areas do you feel are critical that needs to be handled? But first of all, what are the challenges you are facing as we deliver
I think.
your work to the communities?
Yes, I think. Thank you. Just to begin with, is that as government, first of all, there's limited government, what we call political will in some of the conversations that we do, because when you look at issues of sexual reproductive health and rights in Uganda, there's very limited appreciation of rights conversation. Okay.
When you talk about rights, it's a governance issue.
Yes. So,
therefore, when you talk, you must be misunderstood.
True.
So that has put us in the shadow of
our conversations,
shying away from speaking,
and also,
and therefore we become complacent
True.
to the challenge.
Yeah, so government needed to open up space for people to appreciate who they are, and also to appreciate the role of SHR in totality, especially when you're handling community-related adaptation mechanisms. So as RHU, we have had an issue on that, because you will go to a community and start a conversation on gender equality. and people will just move away completely, including climate-related experts.
Wow.
They don't see
The
the
linkage at all.
completely is not there. So how do we support our government to come up with the policies, documents that reflect sexual reproductive health and rights issues as part of climate change adaptation mechanisms is something that we are still lacking. Look at district action plans. They talk about climate change, but they don't highlight sexual reproductive health and rights. Look at national...
And this is very common. In all the... When talk about climate change, people rush so much to go to environment. And again, within environment, they go to the forest, tree planting, you know. There is need to really unpack what this climate change... People don't know that climate change relates to all sectors of the economy. And no sector is not related to climate change or could not be affected by climate change. And just a matter of time. So the earlier we act, the better. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so because of that, it has made our conversation not to take root. And in most cases, we struggle to explain and letting people appreciate what we are doing. Yeah, so that becomes a challenge, but I think as we start reflecting at global level on climate and health, we believe that national players will get the appreciation and possibly invest in our policy processes to make sure that SHR is part of the key adaptation mechanism that they can invest in. Then too, also we have had an issue around finance, because all this conversation needs money.
Yeah.
When there's no money,
without money, nothing can happen.
There's nothing that can change. So climate financing, as government, as stakeholders, I think we should push so that the global north commits to their statements that they always make during the global conversations on climate and health. So if the money trickles down, it facilitates the process, it facilitates awareness, it facilitates research, it facilitates policy formulation. And by doing that, the entire committee will get to know the linkages between SHR and climate change. And then lastly, maybe just to add on, is that us as players also in the space, we I think we still have limited knowledge on issues of climate change. When people who are supposed to create awareness are also not very aware of what the topical issues are, it becomes very hard to let the committee understand. So we still have challenge of capacity. Stakeholders, including civil society players, on the overall climate change programming is concerned. So we need to engage government to build capacities and also strengthen investment in knowledge creation, especially in issues of climate and health, so that we can address this most at least holistically. Yeah, I think that's one of the issues that I wanted to push forward. But maybe as I conclude, I know due to time we are moving faster. Yeah, I want us to recognize that issues of adaptation sometimes are not treated as an issue of urgency, especially when disasters happen. And when you look at most of our disaster response mechanisms in Uganda, they tend not to strengthen the capacity of affected communities to adapt. They will give you posture, you eat today. Tomorrow, they don't want to know how you have settled.
Yes.
But as we do adaptation conversation, as Reproductive Health Uganda, we want to see government integrating sexual reproductive health and rights conversation as part of the minimum service package for emergency response and preparedness. I think if that is taken, They will help to reduce teenage pregnancy that happens in internally displaced camps.
Yes.
They will address issues of HIV that
Yes.
happens during displacements.
Yes.
They will address issues of contraceptive access,
Yes.
unmet need for family planning during emergency, disaster related events. But also, it will also help to create what we call equality in terms of caregiving, because all those conversations will be brought together and passed on to affected communities. That's my call to government, to invest in SRHR and qualify it as part of the minimum service package for emergency response and preparedness.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think your call is very clear. And can I request Martha, what is your call? Your last call, whatever you may want to summarize it with.
Oh, okay, because I had already talked about it. Mine was more around relocating the people in communities that are affected by climate change, people that live in areas that are prone to landslides, that are prone to flooding, people that live around, let me say, River Nyamwamba, so that in case the flooding happens again, there are no people in the area that are going to get affected. So if they can be relocated or something of the sort, yeah.
Okay. I think that's very loud and clear. Of course, we know that the nexus between climate change and sexual and reproductive health is really has been expounded ably by our visitors from Reproductive Health Uganda. And I know that Ecological Christian Organization, together in partnership with the Marathon Advertising, we are happy to bring to you some of these very critical discussions, discussions which are not in the boardrooms of some institutions, discussions which not many people are really very conversant and they are not aware of whatever is happening. And we are really aware that many would wish to work together with us. I think we are more than willing to work with any institutions that are willing to advance this issue to another level. And we look forward to really working together to advance this issue of sexual and reproductive health, not only in Uganda and beyond, but also to further working with other partners to put it on the agenda of the climate change agenda globally, so that issues to do with the loss and damage fund money is there, and that's under the climate financing mechanisms.
True.
Which is very key to advancing action, not only at the grassroots, but also at the different levels, local governments, or regional levels in terms of different countries, central government being supported to do certain things. I think for Uganda, which Geoffrey, you have talked about it very clearly, we are lucky that we have the National Health Adaptation Plan, which provides a legal framework for our actions.
True.
So the financing, climate finance for that matter, can be streamlined towards the implementation of that plan. Of course, where civil society has a role to play, the private sector, government, religious institutions, as well as
Academia.
the academia, which of course research is really very key. And I want to thank you for coming and joining us during this discussion. And I'm happy to share with our audience that this podcast is brought to you by Ecological Christian Organization in partnership with Marathon Advertising. And we thank you for always checking on us and watching and listening to our podcasts. And we believe that by doing so, we shall be able to contribute to climate change mitigation and adaptation as a way of making sure that we make the world a better place. I thank you.
Thank you.